early this afternoon regarding trade adjustment assistance. That's an expired program that would provide help to U.S. workers who lose their jobs due to foreign competition. That's live now on C-SPAN 2, and now to the House floor here on C-SPAN.
The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered today by our guest chaplain, Reverend Judith Wright, First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church, Northborough, Massachusetts.
Let us pray. We gather this afternoon a rich tapestry of faith woven together by diverse religious and spiritual beliefs. In the midst of this theological diversity, may we choose acceptance and love towards one another and strive to live harmoniously and respectfully with all people of our great country and all living beings on our fragile, cherished planet. That which guides us towards the highest within ourselves, lead us on this precious day, as well as every day of our lives, to embrace compassion, love, and equity in all relations. May we respect the inherent worth and dignity of every person and grasp our profound interconnectedness with all. May we ceaselessly help those who suffer, for as they suffer, so do we. May people everywhere live in peace with each other and all living creatures without disturbing one another. In the name of all that is holy, amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. Pledge of Allegiance today will be led by the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern.
I ask everyone to join with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Without objection, the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise
in honor of Reverend Judith E. Wright, who is serving as the House guest chaplain today. For the past 9 years, Reverend Wright has served as the minister of the First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church in Northborough, Massachusetts. During this time, Reverend Wright has played an integral role in our community, engaging her parishioners and encouraging their support for vital safety net programs in central Massachusetts. Under her leadership, the First Parish has directly supported many social action programs, including the Community Meals Program and Habitat for Humanity. As we continue to emerge from a damaging recession, it is more important than ever to encourage support for these organizations that assist our neighbors by helping to provide food for those who are hungry and shelter for those who are homeless. Reverend Wright's dedication to the cause of assisting the most vulnerable members of our community is laudable, and I am deeply inspired by her work to better the lives of the people of central Massachusetts. It is one of Reverend Wright's parishioners, Stephanie Sullivan, who first approached my office about the possibility of Reverend Wright serving as a guest chaplain. Stephanie's profound respect and admiration for the work of Reverend Wright motivated me to nominate her to serve as our guest chaplain today. I ask my colleagues to join me in welcoming Reverend Wright to the Chamber and in celebrating her lifetime of service.
The Chair will entertain up to 15 further requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, it's been almost a year since David Hartley was gunned down by Zeta pirates on Falcon Lake in Texas. The Hartley family still has no suspect, no body, and no justice. David's wife, Tiffany, can't get any answers from our government since it apparently has abandoned the investigation of her husband's murder. So she has actually sued the government to get information. When ICE agent Jaime Zapata was murdered in Mexico, the United States quickly pressured Mexico to investigate the homicide, as it should. But why is our government silent about finding who is responsible for for killing David Hartley and other Americans murdered in lawless Mexico. On Monday at a border forum I held in Brownsville, Texas, Tiffany Hartley said, "The men who murdered David are right across the river. They aren't in Afghanistan, they aren't in Iraq, they're in our own backyard." The United States hunts down terrorists around the globe. It's time we hold Mexico accountable for finding the narco-terrorists in their country who murder Americans. And that's just the way it is.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Massachusetts rise? Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday marked the end of the military's don't ask, don't tell policy. For 18 years, it forced thousands of servicemen and women from our armed forces and discouraged countless other patriotic Americans from enlisting. The policy weakened our military by removing highly skilled, trained, and capable service members from the ranks at a time when we were sending our men and women in uniform on multiple deployments to fight 2 wars. Today, our country is stronger because we all benefit from a military that takes advantage of all the talents our nation has to offer. This policy ended because of the work of many, including my predecessor, Congressman Marty Meehan, who introduced the first bill in the House of Representatives to repeal this policy. Our servicemen and women are first and foremost Americans protecting freedom throughout the world. Today, at last, all these brave people no longer have to hide who they are in order to serve their country. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. For what purpose, gentleman from West Virginia, rise?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Israel is America's best and only reliable ally in the Middle East. Now the national security of Israel is being threatened by the Palestinians' rejection of the Oslo peace accords, as they seek recognition directly from the United Nations. America stands firmly with Israel and believes that peace in the Middle East can only be achieved through a negotiated solution. I call on the Palestinian Authority to make peace with the democracy of Israel and a free world, and to reject the terrorists of Hamas. Prime Minister Netanyahu should be applauded for his efforts to restart direct one-on-one negotiations with President Abbas, without the influence of outside organizations. Today, President Abbas should abandon Palestine's push for a vote on statehood and re-engage with Israel to forge a lasting peace accord. Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
To address the House.
Without objection, gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand before you today under the dome of our nation's capital to applaud the final repeal of the discriminatory policy known as Don't Ask, Don't Tell. The men and women who fight for our country as members of our armed forces fight for what's right, what's fair, and what's just. They fight without asking at what cost, without asking why and how long they must endure. This September 11th marked 10 years since that fateful day when our country was attacked. As I returned home from Chicago, boarded my plane, and landed safely in Washington, I marveled at the dome that still sat, untouched by those who would do us harm, because of those who have no fear, those who gave their last full measure of devotion. And today I'm emboldened further by the fact that these same soldiers who have continued to fight and die for our safety can now do so without having to hide who they are or who they love. Our soldiers fight for what's right, what's fair, and what's just. Finally, we have managed to provide the same to them. Thank you, and I yield back.
The House will receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, a message from the President of the United States.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Secretary.
I am directed by the President of the United States to deliver to the House of Representatives a message in writing.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the President's plans to raise taxes on small business across America will hurt the economy and kill jobs. Small business creates 70% of the jobs in America. Unemployment is 9% in the country and even higher in my state of Florida. We have the threat of a double-dip recession is greater than ever. The last thing we should be doing is raising taxes on job creators. The White House claims the $1.6 trillion tax increase won't affect small businesses and jobs. But as someone that's been in business 30 years and created thousands of jobs, they're wrong. Millions of small businesses file their individual taxes through an individual tax code, and that means that their taxes will go up. In fact, 48% of small business income will face higher tax rates under the President's plan. We need to enact pro-growth policies that create jobs, not kill them. I urge my colleagues to reject the administration's tax hikes on job creators, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose is gentleman from Washington rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I want to note that the sun indeed came up in America today, even after we've allowed people who are gay and lesbian to serve in our military. And we had a discussion on this about for 18 years, and now we have finally taken a step forward to liberty and freedom and equality again, as we have so many times in American history. But now we need to make sure that those new families that are serving in the military get their benefits like everyone else, and that's the next thing we need to work on. And then we have to realize that the day will come when we recognize full marriage equality in this great country as another step forward, just like we had yesterday. And when that great day comes, the sun will come up in the morning in America, because we are continuing our quest to be a more just, more equal society.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose, gentleman from South Carolina rise?
Speaker, I ask permission to address the House 1 minute, revising extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, raising taxes on hard-working American families in this economy will not create new jobs. The President already explained that raising taxes in a down economy does not make sense. Washington's financial problems are not caused by a shortage of revenue. Washington's financial problems are a direct result of skyrocketing, wasteful spending, such as $16 muffins for the DOJ. Promises like the failed stimulus bill have been revealed as empty slogans, failing the promise of holding unemployment below 8%. 25 million Americans are still seeking full-time jobs. The best way to promote jobs is to offer solutions focused on getting Americans back to work, providing certainty with regard to tax reform, while easing the burden of unnecessary regulations will enable job creators to hire once again. House Republicans have sought to achieve this goal by passing legislation aimed at cutting red tape involved with running small businesses. Reforms are being blocked by liberals with the threat of a presidential veto. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose, gentleman from Rhode Island rise?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the end of a shameful and discriminatory policy, the policy of don't ask, don't tell, and to honor our brave military men and women who have served under it for almost 2 decades. As Thomas Jefferson wrote in our Declaration of Independence, our country was conceived on the promise that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Through nearly 2.5 centuries, these words have guided our nation and made our society even more free. Repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell is one more step toward full equality, but there is still so much work to be done. Regrettably, because of the Defense of Marriage Act, service members will continue to face disparities for family programs and benefits, even though they've made the same sacrifices as their fellow members of the armed services. This is not right. Let us be guided by the words of Thomas Jefferson and provide these men and women with the benefits they've earned in service to our country. I commend President Obama for bringing an end to this divisive policy and the senior members of our nation's military who have begun to implement the change, and congratulate my colleagues here in Congress. I'm proud to honor the service of all of our men and women in uniform who serve in harm's way and to mark the end of Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose, gentleman from Colorado rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to honor a soldier who made the ultimate sacrifice and laid down his life for our freedom. United States Army Chief Warrant Officer 4, David R. Carter. Chief Warrant Officer Carter dedicated himself to over 24 years of military service. As a member of the Colorado Army National Guard, he deployed to Afghanistan last summer. On August 6, 2011, he was piloting a CH-47 helicopter on a mission to reinforce a unit under attack in Wardak Province.
On that tragic day, he was one of 30 Americans lost when their helicopter was brought down by enemy fire. Dave Carter was regarded as one of the most highly trained aviators in Colorado, with multiple combat deployments and over 4,000 flight hours. He is also remembered for the tremendous impact he had on his family, friends, and community. Friends recall that he was never too busy to help out with a problem. Chief Warrant Officer David Carter personifies the honor and selflessness of service as a citizen soldier. His bravery and dedication to duty will not be forgotten. As a Marine Corps combat veteran, my deepest sympathies go out to his family, his fellow soldiers, and all who knew him. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise? Without objection, gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to come before this body today to celebrate the end of the discriminatory don't ask, don't tell policy. For too long, American servicemen and women selfishly fought to protect our freedoms without receiving the same freedoms and protections in return. Under this flawed policy, we dismissed 14,000 patriots from our forces, and we turned away countless more Americans who simply wanted to volunteer to defend the country that we share. Today, our nation shows the world that we can rise above prejudice and fear and take a long overdue step toward protecting our service members and reducing discrimination in America. But I am sad to say that this weekend we received a terrible reminder that our work is not done. A 14-year-old boy from my community who was teased by his classmates about his sexual orientation took his own life. This heartbreaking tragedy was needless and should be a reminder to all of us that there are many more like Jamie Rodemeyer who are made by some to believe that it's not okay to be who they are. Mr. Speaker, I am proud of how far we've come, but I know that there remains a long road ahead of us. I am committed to continuing this fight for full equality for all Americans and implore my colleagues to do the same. With that, I'll yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose, gentleman from Florida rise? Without objection, gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, on Friday, Palestinian Authority President Abbas plans to seek recognition of a Palestinian state before the United Nations. A vote in the UN will bypass bilateral peace negotiations between Israel and the PA and will threaten the success of a mutual solution. Leaders in the United States, Israel, and the PA have long worked toward a mutual solution. And the PA seeking unilateral recognition from the UN is not only harmful to these efforts, but also to the security of the State of Israel. It's also important to note that the action coincides with a period of extreme volatility between Israel and the Middle East and their Middle Eastern neighbors. Israel's alliance with Turkey has continued to unravel over the past year, and its peace agreement with Egypt is in jeopardy. The Palestinian Authority's move to circumvent direct talks with Israel will undermine Israel's right to exist. I call for President Abbas to withdraw his request for a UN vote and will instead finally agree to sit down at the negotiating table with the U.S. and Israel to develop a mutual, legitimate
Gentleman's
solution.
time has expired.
I yield
For what
back.
purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
As a former lieutenant commander in the United States Navy Reserve, I rise to applaud the repeal of the discriminatory don't ask, don't tell policy. This backward policy has turned away over 14,000 able-bodied men and women from our military while our nation is fighting 2 wars. It wasted over $1.3 billion taxpayer dollars through investigations, legal proceedings, and wasted training for fighter pilots, mechanics, medics, and even Arabic translators. I am proud to have fought for this necessary change and feel privileged to have been able to cast my vote to make this misguided policy a relic of the past. Our military can now recruit and train qualified, patriotic, and courageous Americans who want to serve our country regardless of their sexual orientation. During my service in the United States Navy Reserve, I served with many dedicated men and women who are always ready to serve their country. I was never concerned about their sexual orientation. Implementation of repeal marks not just an increase in military readiness, but a significant step forward for civil rights and equality. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kansas rise?
Rise to ask unanimous consent to address the body for 1 minute. I have the rise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the history and accomplishments of the Kansas School for the Deaf as we prepare to celebrate the school's sesquicentennial this week. It was 150 years ago that Philip A. Emery began teaching deaf students in a small two-room schoolhouse in Baldwin City, Kansas, using the techniques of Thomas Hawkins Gallaudet. Throughout the years, the Kansas School for the Deaf has been noted for its academic excellence in pre-college preparation and its career and transition program leading to job placement upon graduation. Along the way, the school has had many exciting moments, including almost being destroyed in Contral's famous sacking of Lawrence, Kansas, and even boasts of beating the University of Kansas baseball team twice in 1897 and 1900. As the oldest educational institution in the state of Kansas, the Kansas School for the Deaf continues to provide world-class education to young students, and I'm proud to represent the school and its many families and students in the United States Congress. Now yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise? Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, September is the month in which we celebrate the many contributions Latinos have made and continue to make to our great country. Hispanic Americans are our teachers, religious leaders, doctors, lawyers, healthcare providers, astronauts, scientists, and small business owners and entrepreneurs. They are local and national officials providing leadership in the face of unprecedented challenges both at home and abroad. But perhaps our greatest pride comes from our impressive record of service to this country. When grave threats imperil America's freedom, Latinos answer the call. This is highlighted by the fact that Latino servicemen and women have earned more medals and commendations per combatant than any other ethnic group. As we celebrate the contributions Latinos have made to our country, let us not forget our future. The stories of our nation's Latino trailblazers serve as an inspiration to young Latinos. But like all American children, they must have the opportunity to develop their talents and reach their full potential to keep our country great. I look forward to working with my colleagues to ensure all America's children are prepared to lead. Only then can America realize its promise in the 21st century. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Chairman, I rise today in support of the historic official repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Today, nearly 2 decades after its enactment, our lesbian, gay, and bisexual service members can finally serve and defend the country they love without the fear of being discharged. Never again will members of our military be forced to serve in the shadows, to lie about their identity, or to be afraid to talk about the people they love. Let us remember the 14,000 loyal service members who were discharged under this discriminatory policy over the years, for now they can serve alongside their military friends and family with dignity and honor. Let us also remember those individuals who served in silence and sacrificed their lives so that we, as Americans, can live freely. As Vice Chair of the LGBT caucus in Congress, I see the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell as another step towards assuring and ensuring that all citizens, both inside and outside of the military, are never subject to discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. Today signifies a crucial milestone in history and is a victory, not just for
time
the
has
LGBT
expired.
community,
For what purpose
but
does the
for
gentleman
America
from
as a
California
whole.
rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In September, this is Hispanic Heritage Month, and we celebrate, as members of the Hispanic community, the contributions that have made throughout the United States and throughout our history. The story of Hispanic Americans is truly the American story. Our dream is the American dream. In America, if you work hard, play by the rules, and dream big, there's no limit to what you can achieve. Succeeding in all walks of life and serving as patriots in American armed forces, Hispanics have enriched in so many different ways our way of life. Their advances in universities, the knowledge and talent have continued to play a vibrant role as we strengthen the fabric of America. Hispanic Americans' commitment to faith, family, hard work, perseverance adds to that rich diversity and vibrancy. It makes our country a melting pot like no other place in the world.
Today and every day, we should take time to note and to celebrate the wonderful contributions of the Hispanic community in the San Joaquin Valley and across America.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from New York rise?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, 2 decades after its enactment, Don't Ask, Don't Tell is finally no more. At last, gay men and women can now openly serve in our military without having to hide who they are. Eliminating this practice is a historic step forward in our pursuit of a more perfect union. With this progress, our country's military can now become a shining example of equality, an example to be followed by all sectors of our society. Just as important, this change will make our armed forces stronger. Young Americans who have previously been deterred from joining our military will now step forward, enlist and serve the country they love. Many formerly discharged service members will re-enter the armed services to serve alongside friends and family. Ultimately, our military will benefit from a broader and deeper pool of talent. Now, as we move forward in fully implementing this change, we must ensure that same-sex families receive the same benefits as other military couples. Mr. Speaker, although our work continues, today we are one step closer to the ideal that we are all created equal. I yield back.
The gentlelady's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to say that Democrats in Congress continue to work tirelessly to improve the lives of America's Latino families. During the 111th Congress, we passed historic legislation that made college more accessible and affordable and broadened the scope of health care for very many families. When Democrats controlled the Congress, we increased the maximum Pell Grant in a bipartisan vote from $4,050 to the current $5,550, an increase of 37%. While I was chairman of the subcommittee on higher ed, I proudly stood next to President Obama when he signed the historic Health Care and Education Reconciliation Act of 2010 into law. This new law increased college aid for the 39% of Hispanic college students who receive Pell Grants each year. In contrast, the proposed Republican budget will cut college aid for nearly 10 million students, slashing the maximum Pell Grant award by more than 2,500. Today I stand here with my colleagues in celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month to say that we must pass the DREAM Act. I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington rise?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Well, you're mighty welcome, and you're recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, last year I read on the House floor a letter from an active duty service member in Afghanistan. He shared how he and his partner of 10 years had managed the hardship that comes along with 3 deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. Despite their shared sacrifices, his partner received no support from the military and would not be officially informed of his death. While serving on active duty, he became aware of a number of other soldiers who were gay. In one case, it was only after a friend died of wounds from an IED, received a letter from the deceased soldier's partner expressing how much he had loved the Army. Of course, this letter had to be sent anonymously because until yesterday, its very existence could have led to the soldier's discharge. The indignity of concealing who you are and who you love in order to protect your country has ended. No longer will we subject the brave men and women who volunteered to serve our nation to a shameful vow of silence, asking them to lie about themselves. This policy was wrong, and now it's history. And our nation and our military are stronger as a result. To all who serve our nation in uniform, we are so proud of each and every one of you.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise?
Request to speak for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the 685,000 workers of the United States Postal Service who are facing a very devastating future without our actions. If Congress doesn't act now, we could potentially lose 120,000 jobs, imagine that are in jeopardy today. The United States Postal Service offers a very affordable system, but right now they're in jeopardy. Why? Because back in 2006, they were, I would say in a discriminated way, required to pay $5.5 billion in overcharge into benefits that are not accrued at this time. Based on long-term projections, they have an estimated surplus, imagine that in this time, of $55 to $75 billion. Without this mandate, the USPS would actually have a $611 million benefit that they could help out in this tough economy. Mr. Speaker, there are 685,000 workers who are not at fault for this requirement, and this $5 billion requirement needs to stop now so our Postal Service can continue. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Ask unanimous consent to revise and extend.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor Ted Williams, the last baseball player to hit 400 or better for a season, a feat he accomplished 70 years ago this very month, September 1941, which has never been equaled. Ted wasn't just a remarkable baseball player, he was a remarkable American who also served his country as a Marine Corps pilot in World War II and the Korean War. Ted Williams once said, quote, "A man has to have goals for a day, for a lifetime, and that was mine, to have people say, 'There goes Ted Williams, the greatest hitter who ever lived,'" end quote. Not only did he have a goal, but he also harnessed the determination and hard work necessary to succeed. Today I honor a man who was a friend, a constituent, and a great American on the anniversary of his greatest achievement. He will always be remembered as baseball's greatest hitter.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise?
Address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I'd like to thank my colleagues in the LGBT Equality Caucus, Leader Pelosi, Congresswoman Baldwin, Congressman Frank, everyone today, as we celebrate the end of a discriminatory era against gay and lesbian service members in America with the official repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. For too long, this failed policy unfairly denied fundamental human rights to highly qualified individuals who wish to serve our country. As the Vice Chair of the Congressional LGBT Equality Caucus, I am pleased that the tireless work of our congressional colleagues, the administration, and the LGBT community resulted in the end of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Although this is a remarkable step forward, we still have a long way to go to attain full equality. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgendered people continue to be targets of discrimination in our policies, our laws, and our society. I've always said that discrimination is un-American, and we as a nation must continue to fight for policies that bring us closer to fulfilling the principles we espouse. I encourage all of us to stay committed to ensuring that sexual orientation and gender identity are no longer a cause for inequality.
Time has expired. For what purpose, gentlelady from California rise?
Speaker, to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week I introduced House Resolution 404, a resolution honoring Latinos in the military. And I rise today to recognize all the great contribution and the service that Latinos have given to this country. In fact, Latinos have fought in every United States military conflict that we have had, and today nearly 163,000 Latinos and Latinas serve in the regular components of the armed forces. The contributions and sacrifices that they make to defend our nation are often overlooked, and so I encourage the Secretary of Defense to increase promotion opportunities for Latinos in the armed forces. It's my firm belief that the military should invest in outreach to minority communities and to work to mitigate the barriers that hinder more Latinos from advancing up the career ladder in our armed forces, because our armed forces need Latinos. Latinos, like those who serve, continue to sacrifice their lives daily in Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation UDAWN, and we have lost lives of Latinos also, 539. So I salute the dedication of our Latino service members. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
The lady's time has expired. The chair lays before the House a message.
To the Congress of the United States. Section 202D of the National Emergencies Act, 50 U.S.C. 1622D, provides for the automatic termination of a national emergency unless, prior to the anniversary date of its declaration, the President publishes in the Federal Register and transmits to the Congress a notice stating that the emergency is to continue in effect beyond the anniversary date. In accordance with this provision, I have sent to the Federal Register for publication the enclosed notice, stating that the national emergency with respect to persons who commit, threaten to commit, or support terrorism is to continue in effect beyond September 23, 2011. The crisis constituted by the grave acts of terrorism and threats of terrorism committed by foreign terrorists, including the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001 in New York and Pennsylvania and against the Pentagon, and the continuing and immediate threat of further attacks on United States nationals or the United States that led to the declaration of a national emergency on September 23, 2001 has not been resolved. These actions pose a continuing, unusual, and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States. For these reasons, I have determined that it is necessary to continue the national emergency declared with respect to persons who commit, threaten to commit, or support terrorism, and maintain in force the comprehensive sanctions to respond to this threat. Signed, Barack Obama, the White House, September 21, 2011.
Referred to the Committee on Foreign Affairs and ordered printed. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on motions to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote or the yeas and nays are ordered, or on which the vote incurs objection under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Recorded votes on postponed questions will be taken later. For what purpose does the gentleman from Mississippi seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and adopt Senate Concurrent Resolution 28.
The clerk will report the title of the concurrent resolution.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 28, concurrent resolution authorizing the use of Emancipation Hall in the Capitol Visitor Center for an event to award the Congressional Gold Medal collectively to the 100th Infantry Battalion, 442nd Regimental Combat Team, and the Military Intelligence Service, United States Army, in recognition of their dedicated service during World War II.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Harper, and the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Brady, each will control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Mississippi.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
So ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to submit into the record a letter from Chairman Lundgren that waives further committee consideration of the resolution.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, this resolution honors those brave and courageous Japanese Americans who served in the U.S. Army's 100th Infantry Battalion and 442nd Regimental Combat Team, as well as those who served in the indispensable Military Intelligence Service. The 100th Infantry Battalion fought valiantly in the treacherous Italian campaign, earning their nickname the Purple Heart Battalion because of their bravery and sacrifice. The 442nd Regimental Combat Team was formed in 1943 from Japanese Americans living in relocation camps. A week after D-Day, the 100th Battalion and the 442nd were merged into a single unit which fought heroically in Europe, as seen in their rescue of the famous Lost Battalion in France near the German border. These Japanese-American units suffered enormously high casualty rates and received over 18,000 individual decorations, including 9,486 Purple Hearts. For their service in 8 major campaigns in Italy and France, the 100th Infantry Battalion and the 442nd Regimental Combat Team earned 8 Presidential Unit citations. Members of the Military Intelligence Service were Japanese Americans who served this country by intercepting radio messages, translating documents, writing leaflets encouraging opposing troops to surrender, and helping our forces understand the enemy we were fighting. In fact, according to General Douglas MacArthur's intelligence officer, Charles Willoughby, the efforts of the Military Intelligence Service shortened the war by 2 years. Mr. Speaker, Second Lieutenant Daniel Inouye, who received a battlefield commission in November 1944, was one of these brave men. Gravely wounded in April of 1945, Lieutenant Inouye received the Distinguished Service Cross. It is fitting and proper that our distinguished colleague in the other body sponsored this legislation, and I'm honored to speak in support of it here today. I ask my colleagues to support this resolution authorizing use of Emancipation Hall in November for this Congressional Gold Medal for this ceremony, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, on October 5, 2010, President Obama signed into law S-1055, a bill granting the 100th Infantry Battalion 442nd Regiment Combat Team and the Military Intelligence Service the Congressional Gold Medals. This concurrent resolution authorizes the use of Emancipation Hall in the Capitol Visitor Center to award the Congressional Gold Medal to these brave servicemen and women in recognition of their dedicated service during World War II. The 100th Infantry Battalion, 442nd Regimental Combat Team, and the Military Intelligence Service were comprised predominantly of Japanese Americans during World War II. At that time, many of the soldiers' families were subject to internment and discrimination, yet these courageous Americans fought with distinction and valor. Collectively, the 100th Battalion and the 442nd Regimental Combat Team became the most highly decorated unit of its size and length in the history of the United States Army, receiving 7 Presidential Unit citations, 21 Medals of Honor, 29 Distinguished Service Crosses, 560 Silver Stars, 4,000 Bronze Stars, 22 Legion of Merit Medals, 15 Soldiers Medals, and over 4,000 Purple Hearts. The contribution of these Japanese Americans is not only limited to the front line. The Military Intelligence Service provided critical classified information that was vital to the success of the United States military in the Pacific Theater. The recognition of these Americans is overdue, and Emancipation Hall is a befitting place to bestow this award for the sacrifice and dedication was shown in the face of discrimination. Join with me today in concurrent resolution, in supporting this concurrent resolution, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. For what purpose? Gentleman from Mississippi rise.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves.
Mr. Speaker, I would now like to yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from American Samoa.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I do want to thank Mr. Brady for allowing me to speak on this important resolution. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the full text of my statement be made part of the record.
Without objection.
And on behalf of our chairwoman, Judy Chu, and the members of our Congressional Asia-Pacific Caucus, I rise today in support of Senate Concurrent Resolution 28, a resolution that would authorize the use of Emancipation Hall in the Capitol Visitor Center for an event to award the Congressional Gold Medal to the 100 Battalion 442nd Regimental Combat Team and the Military Intelligence Service in recognition of their dedicated service during World War II. I want to personally thank Senator Daniel Inouye for sponsoring this resolution, and I thank also my fellow members of Congress and colleagues who join me in support of this important bill. Mr. Speaker, as a Vietnam veteran and also as a former member of the 100 Battalion 442nd Infantry Combat Group out of Honolulu, Hawaii, I am especially proud to say that we must recognize Senator Daniel Inouye and also the late Senator Spark Matsunaga, both from Hawaii, who distinguished themselves in battle as soldiers with the 100 Battalion and the 442nd Infantry Group during World War II. As we all know, Mr. Speaker, after the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, there was such an outrage and outcry for an all-out war against Japan. And days afterwards, our President and the Congress officially declared war against Japan. Out of this retaliation against Japan, however, tens of thousands of Americans were caught in the crossfire. These Americans just happened to be of Japanese ancestry. The federal government immediately implemented a policy whereby over 100,000 Americans of Japanese ancestry, men, women, and children, were forced to live in what we call relocation camps, but were actually more like prison or concentration camps. Their lands, their homes, their properties were confiscated by the federal government without due process of law. It was a time in our nation's history when there was so much hatred, bigotry, and racism against our fellow Americans who just happened to be of Japanese ancestry. Despite all of this, Mr. Speaker, over 10,000 Japanese Americans volunteered to join the U.S. military, despite the fact that their wives, their parents, their brothers and sisters are imprisoned behind barbed wire fences in these relocation camps. As a result of such volunteerism, 2 combat units, the 100 Battalion and the 442nd Infantry Combat Group, were organized and immediately sent to fight the Nazi Germany in Europe. Mr. Speaker, in my humble opinion, history speaks for itself in documenting that none have shed their blood more valiantly for our nation than the Japanese American soldiers who served in these 2 combat units. These units suffered an unprecedented casualty rate of 314%. They emerged as the most decorated combat units of their size in the history, military history, of the U.S. Army. The 100 Battalion 442nd Infantry received over 18,000 individual decorations for bravery and courage in the field of battle, many awarded posthumously. They were awarded 53 Distinguished Service Crosses, 560 Silver Stars, 9,486 Purple Hearts, and 7 Presidential Unit Citations, and the nation's top award for combat units. And yet, ironically, Mr. Speaker, only 1 Medal of Honor was awarded to these soldiers. It was not until 1999 that Congress took corrective action by mandating a re-examination of why just 1 Medal of Honor was awarded to these Japanese American soldiers. As a result of this review process, President Clinton awarded 20 additional Congressional Medals of Honor to these brave Japanese American soldiers, and Senator Inouye was one of those recipients of the Congressional Medal of Honor. Mr. Speaker, we should also note that while the 100 Battalion and 442nd Infantry were fighting on the front lines, thousands of Japanese Americans also joined the first U.S. military foreign language intelligence school, the Military Intelligence Service, where they learned Japanese. During the war, about 6,000 MIS agents fought in all Army units in the Pacific and were assigned to Allied forces in Australia, in Britain, in Canada, in China, and India. They staffed theater-level intelligence centers, and their duties included the 442nd Infantry. On October 5, 2010, President Barack Obama granted the Congressional Gold Medal collectively to the 100 Battalion and the 442nd Regimental Combat Group, as well as the 6,000 Japanese Americans who served in the Military Intelligence Service during World War II. Mr. Speaker, I believe that each one of these Americans, heroes, should be recognized for this high honor here in the heart of our nation's capital, the U.S. Capitol, for their bravery, their patriotism, and their selfless service. I ask my colleagues to support this resolution to honor these men and women who valiantly served our nation, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Mississippi.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Mr. Speaker, I'd now like to yield 1 minute from the gentlelady from California, Ms. Napolitano.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Brady. I would like to add my support to the President Obama signing into law S-1055.
on October the 5th of this last year, which grants the 110th Infantry Battalion, the 442nd Regiment Combat Team, and the Military Intelligence Service the Congressional Gold Medal. And also authorizes the use of Emancipation Hall and the Capitol Visitor Center to award this medal to the brave servicemen and women in recognition of their service during World War II, which my husband was a participant of. Too long we tend to ignore the contributions of many of our military men and women simply because they don't look traditional. And I know that in California we did the same thing with the fishing village in San Pedro that had been ignored. They lost everything and were put into camps during the war. So, and on another matter, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take this moment to address an issue that is very, very concerning to many of us, especially those in the Latino community. May I have a moment, one minute?
Give the lady one additional minute.
Thank you, sir.
One more
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Mental health in our Latino community, it's been ignored for too long, especially in all minority communities, but mostly in Hispanic. It's an issue that we need to take the stigma out, and because we don't want to hear it, we don't want to see it, and we certainly don't want to speak about it. Suicide is the third leading cause of death for Hispanic Americans aged 15 to 24, the 13th leading cause for Hispanics of all ages. To quote Mia St. John, three-time world boxing champion, Latina, affected by mental illness growing up and a strong mental health advocate, I was the first generation in my family born in America. All I wanted to be was American. I had stress, depression, symptoms that professionals could have recognized as anxiety or psychosis. By the time I was 18, I was homeless and contemplating suicide. We have H.R. 751, Mental Health in Schools Act, on-site mental health delivery services for our youth, which will save lives and give hopes, and shares a message to never be afraid or be ashamed to ask for help. I ask for support for mental health and H.R. 751.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Mississippi.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to now yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Washington State, Mr. McDermott.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes. 3.
Mr. Speaker, I rise as a very proud honorary member of the Nisei Vets, the group that you're honoring today, and in support of this resolution. Seattle was the site of a roundup of thousands of Americans. Ordinary Americans had businesses, had truck farms, kids were going to high school, were going to college. One of them, a young man named William Nakamura, was an 18-year-old kid at Garfield High School, rounded up, taken out to the middle of Idaho to a camp out there. And then the government said, if you'd like to come back and join the military and serve, you can. There was lots of debate among the people in the camps about whether they should come back or not. And as you heard, 10,000 came back and were the most decorated unit in history of the United States military. They distinguished themselves beyond any group that have ever served for this country. William Nakamura took out 2 machine gun nests and was himself killed, and is the courthouse in Seattle is now named after him as a memorial to what this country really stands for. The Japanese Americans, the Nisei Vets, set an example for this country we must never forget. As we look at our Muslim brothers, and we sometimes can't distinguish just exactly, you hear ugly talk that's reminiscent of what went on in this country in the early 40s. We must never let us act again as we did against these Japanese Americans. They proved that an American is an American. No matter what his face looks like or her face looks like, they are Americans. And they deserve that respect. They deserve the due process of law. They lost all their property in Seattle. Unless they could give it to someone and say, would you take care of this? Some people did get it back at the end because other Caucasian Americans took it and held it for them and gave it back after the war. They did not receive due process of law. There were all kinds of violations of their civil rights. And that's why this memorial is important, for us to remind ourselves of how real Americans act, no matter where they came from, and how much they're willing to give to make this country the strong place that it is. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Mississippi.
Mr. Speaker, I have no other speakers. I am prepared to close, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I have no other speakers. I'm prepared to close. Again, I urge all members to support this resolution. I'm extremely proud myself to support it. My father was a member of the United States Marine Corps that served in the Pacific Theater, and I'm sure he was very proud of the men and women, the Japanese men and women that were out there supporting and helping him. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Mississippi.
Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to Senate Concurrent Resolution 28? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative.
Mr. Speaker.
Suspended.
Mr. Speaker. On this, I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. From California seek recognition.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass Senate Bill 846.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Senate 846, an act to designate the United States Courthouse located at 80 Lafayette Street in Jefferson City, Missouri, as the Christopher S. Bond United States Courthouse.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from California, Mr. Denham, and the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Costello, will each control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on SB 846.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Senate Bill 846 would designate the newly constructed federal courthouse at 80 Lafayette Street in Jefferson City, Missouri, as the Christopher S. Bond United States Courthouse. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Senator Blunt of Missouri for introducing this legislation. I want to thank his colleague, Senator McCaskill, also of Missouri, for co-sponsoring this bill. Senator Bond has honorably served the state of Missouri and this nation for many decades. He was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and went on to pursue his undergraduate degree at Princeton University and his law degree at the University of Virginia. After law school, he clerked for the Honorable Albert Tuttle, who was then the Chief Judge of the United States Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta, Georgia. After a brief time in private practice in Washington, D.C., he moved back to Missouri, where he was elected as Missouri State Auditor in 1970. 2 years later, Senator Bond was elected governor of Missouri at the age of 33, making him the youngest governor in state history. He served 2 terms from 73 to 77 and from 81 to 85. In 86, Senator Bond ran successfully for the United States Senate, where he represented the citizens of Missouri for 24 years until his recent retirement after the 111th Congress. During his time in the Senate, he served on several committees and was chair of the Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship from 1995 to 2001. I believe that it's appropriate that we honor Senator Bond's dedicated service for his state and country. I support passage of this legislation and urge my colleagues to do the same. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Illinois.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of S. 846, a bill that names the United States Courthouse located at 80 Lafayette Street in Jefferson City, Missouri, as the Christopher S. Bond United States Courthouse. Senator Kit Bond is a sixth-generation Missourian with a long and distinguished career in public service, spanning over 40 years, serving in many different capacities as an elected official at both the state and federal levels. Senator Bond served as a law clerk to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, a Missouri Assistant State's Attorney General, Missouri State Auditor, Governor of Missouri, and finally his longest-serving post as United States Senator from 1987 to 2010 from the state of Missouri. In the Senate, Senator Bond served on the committees on Appropriations, Commerce, Science, and Transportation, and Intelligence. As ranking member of the Select Committee on Intelligence, Senator Bond played an important role as Congress crafted its anti-terror policies in the aftermath of September 11th terrorist attacks. Senator Bond also worked well with members across the aisle on many issues, including perhaps one of his proudest legislative accomplishments as a co-sponsor of the Family Medical Leave Act, signed into law by President Bill Clinton in 1993. Finally, Senator Bond was a vigorous advocate for the state of Missouri, proudly championing and pursuing federal investment in support of public housing, university research, defense, agriculture, and infrastructure throughout the state. Senator Bond and I work very closely on a number of projects for Missouri and Illinois in the St. Louis region, including the new Mississippi River Bridge, which is under construction now. In January 2009, Senator Bond announced that he would not run for re-election in 2010, noting that in 1973, at 33 years old, he had become the youngest governor ever to be elected in Missouri, and that he had no desire to become Missouri's oldest senator. Naming the federal courthouse in Jefferson City as the Senator Christopher Kit Bond Courthouse is a fitting tribute, and I support the passage of Senate Bill 846, which honors his service to our country and to this great institution. I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting this legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from Missouri, Ms. Hartzell.